Stalybridge, a former mill town nestled in the foothills of the Pennines, is a place built on hard work and quiet routine. Its stone terraces climb the hillsides, watching over a community where most people keep to themselves. On the surface, Courtney Larkin and Ellie Morton were no different. They were two young mothers navigating the challenges of raising children alone in Greater Manchester, their lives seemingly defined by school runs, part-time jobs, and the constant effort to make ends meet. Courtney Larkin, at 25, carried the heavier burden. A single mother of two, she had already faced the unimaginable pain of seeing her children taken into the care system. In the spring of 2022, she was trying to rebuild, living with her father and tentatively reconnecting with her 9-year-old son. But behind the closed door of her flat on Stonecliff Terrace, a desperate battle was being fought. A low point in her life had led her to cocaine, and what began as a means of escape was metastasizing into something far more sinister. To the outside world, she was a woman trying to get back on her feet. In reality, she was sinking deeper. Ellie Morton, just 21, presented a starkly different picture. She was a mother to a 2-year-old daughter, holding down a part-time job as a cleaner at the local Hollywood Bowl. Her life was grounded by a supportive family. Her mother was an NHS nurse and her father a firefighter, professions built on duty and public service. Ellie co-parented with the help of this stable network and had no known history with the police or a reputation for trouble. She was, by all accounts, a young woman focused on childcare and cleaning shifts. Neither fit the profile of a drug trafficker. There were no flashy cars, no designer clothes, no unexplained wealth. Just two women from the same town, bound by the common thread of young motherhood. But one of them had a secret, an operation running silently from her living room, and soon the other would be pulled into its orbit with devastating consequences. This was not an operation orchestrated by a hardened criminal gang. There was no menacing figure in the shadows forcing Courtney Larkin's hand. According to the evidence later pieced together by Greater Manchester Police, she was the architect of her own downfall. Between April 8th and May 6th, 2022, Larkin established and ran a ruthlessly efficient drugs hotline from a single dedicated mobile phone. For just under a month, that phone was the nerve center of a street-level Class A supply chain. The process was methodical. Larkin would source wholesale quantities of cocaine from a local dealer. Back in her flat, she would perform the dangerous chemistry of cooking it into crack. With meticulous care, she would weigh out portions, package them into small, heat-sealed snap bags, and arrange for their distribution across the region, often using her own vehicle for deliveries. Police would later describe her enterprise as structured, clean, and quietly consistent. It was a business model stripped of all glamour, run with a chilling pragmatism. The motivation, her defense would later argue, was born from a spiral of addiction and trauma. She was dealing to fund her own habit, a classic and tragic tale. But the scale had grown beyond personal use. She was moving thousands of pounds worth of product, and in doing so, she had graduated from a user to a key supplier in the local drug economy. She had made herself a target. Every text message sent, every delivery made, was a digital breadcrumb leading investigators ever closer to her front door. The morning of Friday, May 6, 2022, dawned gray and unremarkable. At 11 Hunquack a.m., Ellie Morton arrived at Stonecliff Terrace. The plan was simple. Courtney was giving her a lift into Moseley for a planned lunch. But when the door opened, the casual atmosphere of two friends meeting up instantly evaporated. Larkin wasn't grabbing her keys or her coat. She was on the living room floor, surrounded by the tools of her illicit trade. A mirror served as a makeshift work surface, covered in a dusting of white powder. Beside it lay digital scales, sharp blades for cutting, and stacks of tiny plastic baggies. She was mid-operation, her focus absolute. Morton was, by her own account, shocked. She asked if they could leave, but Larkin was insistent. She had to finish first. What happened in the next hour would alter the course of both their lives. In a decision that would later be described as catastrophic and naive, Ellie Morton agreed to help. She sat down on the floor beside her friend. In near silence, the two women worked, their hands moving with quiet purpose, preparing the poison for the streets. On a low table between them, 37 individual wraps of crack cocaine were already laid out, measured, and sealed. But that wasn't the full extent of the operation. Tucked in a corner of the room, almost out of sight, was an ordinary Aldi bag for life. Neither woman saw the plain-clothed officers from Greater Manchester Police assembling outside, acting on weeks of intelligence. The clock was ticking. At precisely 12:05 p.m., it stopped. A battering ram smashed through the lock and the front door flew open. The raid was over in seconds. The scene that greeted the officers was what they called an evidential paradise. There was no chase, no struggle, no frantic attempt to hide the evidence. Larkin and Morton were caught in the act, frozen on the floor amidst a sea of incriminating proof. The 37 wraps were seized, but the true prize was in the Aldi bag. Inside, police found a solid block of crack cocaine weighing 1.1185 kilograms. The total street value of the seizure was estimated at a staggering $123,000. Arrested on the spot, both women were taken to Ashton-under-Lyne Police Station for questioning. Their response was identical: a wall of silence. Throughout their interviews, neither offered any explanation, denial, or detail. No comment was the only answer they gave, but their silence couldn't protect them from the digital ghosts stored on their mobile phones. Forensic specialists from GMP's technical teams went to work. The contents of Courtney Larkin's device laid her entire operation bare. It was a digital diary of her crimes: text messages arranging deals with buyers, location data placing her at handover points, and evidence of a coordinated supply network. It proved she wasn't just a cog in the machine, she was the engine. Ellie Morton's phone told a different story. A thorough analysis found nothing to suggest she was involved in drug dealing prior to that morning. There were no communications with buyers, no incriminating photos, no history of supply. Her only crime, it seemed, was being present and making the devastating choice to participate. But at that moment, the law made little distinction. Both women were charged with possession with intent to supply a Class A drug, facing the full weight of the justice system. On Monday, December 12, 2022, Courtney Larkin and Ellie Morton stood before a judge at Minshall Street, Crown Court. With the evidence so overwhelming, both had pleaded guilty, and the proceedings moved directly to sentencing. The courtroom listened as the narratives of their lives were presented. Larkin's defense solicitor painted a picture of a life scarred by trauma and mental health issues, culminating in a drug dependency that spiraled into dealing. She was a woman who had lost everything, including her children, and made a series of terrible choices in her desperation. For Morton, her barrister argued a case of profound naivety. He stressed she had no idea about the kilogram of cocaine in the Aldi bag and had only been involved for that single, fateful hour. She was a young, easily influenced woman who had made a catastrophic error in judgment after walking into a situation she never anticipated. The judge, while acknowledging their personal hardships, returned to the grim reality of their crime. "Let's be clear," he stated, his voice firm. "These drugs, in particular, cause misery." He affirmed that Larkin had played a significant role, structuring and managing a street-level supply line. This wasn't a mistake, it was a business. The sentences reflected their vastly different roles. Courtney Larkin, the operator of the drug line, was imprisoned for 4 years and 11 months. Ellie Morton, the accomplice for 1 hour, received a 2-year sentence, suspended for 20 months. She walked out of court, but not to freedom. She was ordered to complete 150 hours of unpaid work, attend 40 rehabilitation days, and wear an electronic tag, enforcing a nightly curfew. One woman went to prison, the other went home to her daughter forever marked by a criminal record and the knowledge of how close she came to losing everything. Their futures, once parallel paths through the same town, had been irrevocably split by a single hour in a room filled with white powder and bad decisions.